Hi everyone, my name is Meera Abuzer,
And my name is Jessica Gonzales.
and we are UIC dietetic interns enrolled in the Accelerated Master's Coordinated Program for Nutrition Science.
Yes, so we're currently finishing our last semester of our master's degree.
Yes, and then we are going to be going on to become registered dietitians. What a registered dietitian does is they are utilized to practice medical nutrition therapy. They are also a healthcare professional that can give nutrition advice. We can do many different variety of settings we could work in, such as clinical. We could do community settings. We could do food service settings. And in order to become a registered dietitian, we have to complete a minimum of 1,200 hours of supervised practice, which will let us sit down for the RD exam and get our credentials, as well as be licensed in the state of Illinois.
So today we're going to be talking to you a little bit about soil health and compost. So let's jump right into our lecture.
Hi everyone, so today's lecture is going to be about compost and soil health here at the UIC Nutrition Teaching Garden. This presentation was created by Meera and myself. We're both UIC dietetic interns, currently finishing our last semester of graduate school. So the UIC Nutrition Teaching Garden, it's like an outdoor classroom for us. Our mission is to provide a model of urban farming as a viable ingredient procurement source and to highlight the numerous health benefits of growing one's own food in the urban setting. So we want to provide every student here at UIC the fundamentals of producing your own food from a garden to the kitchen to your own table. We believe that every student we train in urban gardening and food preparation will go on to inspire others to do the same and start their own garden at home. In this way, we are sowing the seeds of healthy behaviors here at UIC to support a unlimited number of people across the state of Illinois and beyond. So what is composting? Composting is a controlled aerobic biological decompositioning of organic matter. Mostly aerobic microorganisms decompose this organic material that we add. And the management of these microorganisms work on the carbon to nitrogen ratio found in the compost. We also manage our oxygen and moisture levels, and we consider our temperature and pH of our compost. So why should you compost? Well, composting helps develop the biodiversity in the garden and in the soil. It also helps plant resist some pests and diseases, and it helps them minimize the use of outside resources and materials. And just, a little FYI, about 40% of all food in the US goes to waste every year, which is about 119 billion pounds of food, or $408 billion worth of food. So yeah, we are known as the biggest producers of food waste around the world. So one way of composting is what we call vermicomposting. So vermicomposting involves placing a specific species of worms in a designated container, such as the one to the left, feeding them kitchen and garden waste. So worm composting is great for those too little to no garden. The bin is compact, self-contained, and it's not a smelly process. The worms are also able to continue working throughout the winter, and it helps you reduce kitchen waste all year round. So here in the picture to the left, we are preparing our winter worm hotel. So we have our vermicompost bin. So we're going to be placing worms that we find in our compost and in our soil into this bin, and then we're going to be keeping it upstairs in our food slab throughout the winter. So in that way, come spring, we just add them back into our environment and into our compost, and they can continue working and doing their role in decomposting our kitchen waste. So why should you vermicompost? Well, as we mentioned, worm composting is great for those that live in urban settings where your space is limited. The bins are very small and unobstructed, as you saw, like the bin on the other side was really small. They require minimal maintenance. You're able to move it around. It can be kept both indoors and outdoors. Worms like to feed on continuous kitchen waste, and they also work during the winter season if you keep them warm. And it usually takes about several months for your food waste to have turned into a compost. So worms are picky eaters, though. They don't like any citrus fruits, so any limes or lemons are a no. They do enjoy other fruits. They enjoy vegetables. They enjoy paper, such as cardboard as well. And again, they do thrive on just eating weekly kitchen waste. Other ways to compost that we use here at UIC is the tumbler system. So the tumbler system uses a compost bin like the one to the right, where we add all of our material inside and then we churn it, or we tumble it per se. And we do this about every week to make sure all of our material in there is well balanced and well mixed together. And here we could add the same things as the warm vermicomposting. So fruits and vegetables are great, cardboard and paper as well. But we could also add in eggshells, coffee grounds, nuts to these bins. So you have a little more variety of what you could add in here. And usually it takes about 1 to 6 months for you to see any compost. And then in this video, we see the student adding in her kitchen scraps onto her compost bin. This was taken from the cooking lab upstairs. And then she's just gonna churn it or tumble it slowly just to make sure that everything in there is mixed adequately and we're balancing our bins. Another way of composting that we also use here at UIC is the bokashi system. And this originated back in Japan. It is a fermentation process. So during this process, usually your kitchen material or your waste, it starts to break down into sugars such as ethanol, lactic acid, and carbon dioxide. And eventually it forms this liquid that you add onto your soil. So on this one, again, you could add everything you could add from the vermicompost and the tumbler system. But in addition, you could also add dairy, fish, and meat, as well as any bone waste. So any animal products could go in here as well. It usually takes a little bit longer than the other ones, ranging between 6 months to 2 years. Now in this video, we see Chef Renea adding in this liquid onto our soil. This liquid is made from our bokashi system. So we're draining off all that liquid into our soil. It has lots of beneficial nutrients and bacteria that are going to help our soil also become very nutritious. So we're doing this around end of September, like during the fall season. And then we're going to cover it back with soil. And then come spring and summertime, when it's time to plant our seeds, then our soil is going to be really nutrient rich from all this, all the nutrients we added at this time. So what items can be composted? As you mentioned, any natural like plant foods, such as like vegetables and fruits are great. Just make sure you remove any of those plastic stickers that the stores put on our fruits and vegetables. Any paper or cardboard is great. Again, just as long as you remove those labels. Egg cartons work, shredded newspapers, eggshells, as we mentioned. And what items should not be composted? Any fats and oils, animal products, unless you are using the bokashi system. Metal, glass, and plastic should be avoided, and salt and processed foods cannot be composted. So the closed loop method. Here at UIC, we use what's called the closed loop method. So we start off with our compost. We add in all of our kitchen scraps from our cooking classes onto our compost. We let the compost, decompose and do its thing. And then we add it into our soil and we mix it in with our soil to then generate even more nutrients. We plant our seeds and then we have our plants that then we harvest. From this harvest, we use it up on our kitchen labs to create some wonderful dishes. And again, any like leftover plant material that we just didn't use, we add it back to our compost. So as you can see, it's just a full circle. And this is how we reduce our waste here at UIC. So there are 5 stages in the compost process, and every stage has its own variety of organisms that work together to break down this organic material. So in stage 1, the normal bacteria you would find like just on the surface of food and kitchen waste begins to break down this material. And then in stage 2, this bacteria continues to multiply and larger creatures such as worms begin to move into our compost, and this continues to help with the breakdown of the material. And then in stage 3, we have the most activity. So as activity increases, we also have more heat being generated. So bacteria that can withstand this heat now move into our compost alongside the bacteria that was already there and the worms and other larger creatures. And then in stage 4, we usually have like a limited air and food supply. So as this starts to decrease, there's different bacteria and a different group of fungi that come in to continue decomposing. And in stage 5, this compost will continue decomposing until eventually you use it in your garden.
All right, now let's move on to emphasis on soil care. We compost here at UIC with the specific goal to create rich and nutritious soil for our garden. Worms, as well as other organisms involved in composting, will first break down the waste in order to create rich soil. If you do end up finding worms, like this picture right here, in your compost or your garden, that is a good sign of a healthy habitat as well as a healthy environment. As we look at this figure of the compost process, I first want to mention that the compost pile passes through a wide range of temperatures over the course of active composting. As the temperature varies, conditions become unsuitable for some microorganisms while it becomes suitable for others. The active composting process has 3 temperature ranges. The first one is psychrophilic, which is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and below, mesophilic, which is between 50 degrees Fahrenheit and 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and lastly thermophilic, which is 105 degrees Fahrenheit and above. These ranges are defined to make a rough donation between temperatures at which certain classes of microorganisms have peak growth rates and efficiencies. Active compost, also known as the lag time, is the time necessary for the development of the microbial population. As the microbial population begins to degrade, the most readily degradable material and the population increases the heat generated by the microbial activity, which is then trapped by the self-insulating compost material. Alright, so now for the cooling process, we can conclude that temperatures continue to rise and peak at 130 degrees Fahrenheit to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Once this peak is reached, microbial activity begins to decrease in response to a depletion in readily degradable material and oxygen, or to the excessively high temperature that is detrimental to their function. Now, curing is marked by a lower level of microbial activity and is responsible for stabilizing the products resulting from active composting. Alright, so now we have 4 main members of the compost party. Starting off with bacteria, they are small, simple organisms that present primarily during the early stages of the composting period. Fungi, which are larger organisms than bacteria. Actinomycetes, that are the 3rd major class of microorganisms that inhabit a compost pile. And lastly, higher organisms that begin to invade the compost pile, but once the pile temperature is cooled to suitable levels. There are 3 important things to consider when you start composting, which is your equipment, location, and composting materials. Composting does not need an expensive bin to get started. A simple plastic compost bin or a DIY bin made out of old pallets works just fine. For a location, think about your home space and where you plan on placing your bin. You want to make sure it is easily accessible and placed in direct sunlight. For your composting materials, a good compost requires a balance of greens, which is vegetable and fruit waste, as well as browns, which is cardboard and brown leaves. This maintains a balance of wet and dry products. 3 great uses of compost are using compost on flower and vegetable gardens, you can mix it with potting soil for indoor plants, and lastly, you can apply it to lawns to supply nutrients for grass to grow. Now let's talk about considerations for compost maintenance. A warm compost will usually work faster than a cold compost. Also, placing your compost in a sunny area versus a shady one will help with the decomposition. For moisture, having a good balance of wet and dry material is essential for good compost. And this can be achieved by good drainage and mixing your materials together. Compost that is wet may have an unpleasant smell, and compost that is dry will be very slow to compost. For odor, this can be caused by too much wet material, too much dry material, or minimal oxygen. Now for our final product. Our land application is mulch. Some benefits include preserving moisture in the soil, may reduce weeds, contributes nutrients to the soil, and provides a home for various organisms. Our role in this loop is to support growers, including farmers markets, farmers using regenerative agriculture growing methods, not necessarily certified organic, reducing food waste, such as cooking at home rather than letting produce go bad in the crispy drawer, purchasing only what you need, and meal planning and meal prepping. Lastly, composting, so save compostable food scraps and manage your own compost bin or pile, start your own compost, or subscribing to a composting service. Now hopefully we can all reduce food waste by looking at this statistic. 1/3 of all food produced is wasted. Food waste also contributes to 11% of the world's emissions. Worldwide, about 2.5 billion tons of food go to waste per year. The USA alone discards about 60 million tons, which is equivalent to 120 billion pounds per year. We are also known as the country with the highest amount of food waste. To summarize, here are the main key points to take away from this lecture. 1, understand how we can support healthy soil. Understand how soil impacts planet health and human health. Reduce or eliminate food waste. This is also due to buying produce and using it instead of wasting it. Contribute to a compost pile rather than the landfill. Importance of meal planning and meal preparation. This is also a key point in order of reducing food. And the registered dietitian nutritionist, also with the credential of RDN, plays an important role in the food system and in patient care. Thank you so much for watching our lecture today.
We hope you learned something new about compost and soil health, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.